This is the Little Moments Count Radio Podcast, created in partnership with community radio stations throughout Minnesota. Each episode, you'll hear interviews with early childhood experts on how to support the important brain development that takes place in the first 1,000 days of life, just through little moments every day. Learn more at littlemomentscount.org/podcast.
FM 89.9 KMOJ. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, good afternoon. Walter Q. Banks Jr. got you in the afternoon drive. There's no question about that right there. And letting you know that we're finna lock in with Little Moments Count. And just letting you know that Little Moments Count is presented in partnership with Little Moments Count and KMOJ Radio. It is a statewide collaborative focusing on helping parents and caregivers learn about the importance of brain development in the first 3 years of a young one's life. Now, for the listening audience, can you give us just a little bit of insight? Because you have a podcast that you have in order, which is called Early Risers. And so for the listening audience, give us the motivation of what got that started and what it's all about.
Yeah, I'd love to. So we are now just started season 5 of Early Risers. And Early Risers started in 2021, and it's a collaboration between Little Moments Count and NPR. I've worked in the field of early childhood and human services for over 30 years, and so after George Floyd was murdered, I took a real hard look at what was happening in our field. And I kind of wrote an open letter. I was angry, and I wrote a letter, kind of an open letter to the early childhood community, talking about what our responsibility was in the field of racism, or anti-racism, I should say. And so, long story short, out of that, this podcast was born because I realized that people really didn't know how to talk to children, young children, about race. And my dream was that if young children could actually learn to talk about race, then eventually they would grow up to be able to do something about it. Because you can't solve a problem, Q, if you can't even talk about it. So that was my dream, is to really be able to teach people how to talk to children about race.
Now, when it comes to that whole side of it and talking to children at large, why is it important to hear directly from educators in the classroom and the unique perspective of that? Talk to me for a little bit.
Yeah, so it's really important for children to hear from all adults. But what's important is that that children don't get shut down from the conversation. Children, like you said, 80% of brain development is happening by the time a child is 5. So they're learning really fast, and they're learning from all of their environments. They're learning from what they see, from what they hear, and they're also learning from what they feel in the environment. And so if adults are not talking to them about race, or if they try to ask a question about race and get shut down, they are learning that they cannot talk about it, that it is not a safe topic to talk about. And so they clam up. And so it's really important for adults to get real comfortable, I say, with being uncomfortable. Because the real reason we don't like to talk about it is because we got our own issues going on when it comes to race and racism. And we don't want to open those up. And so if we deal with our own issues, then we can have the conversations with young children that need to be had so that they can know that they can talk about these things.
So now when it comes to a parent themselves, be it the mother or father or both, what are some of the things that you would say to try when it comes to just getting those parents to deal with the issues before they even get to the youngsters?
Yeah. So it's important to note that all children are developing their racial identity. White children, children of color. And so for parents of white children, it's important to know that they can learn that they are not the only race that's out there, and that their race is not the dominant race, and that all, races are special and beautiful, and there's something great about all of them. For children of color, for parents of children of color, it's important to be able to have conversations with them and teach them not to internalize their racism. Because in a place like Minnesota, it's not an if, but a when your child will encounter racism. And so what's important is that they know what racism is, and that the images that they're getting, or that the names perhaps they might be called, is not a reality, and that they don't internalize that. And so it's important for adults to really begin to look at, what are their own issues that they've had? Because we've all had a little stuff going on. And so what is the issues I've had with race? So that, and let me kind of deal and walk through that so that I can be able to have a conversation with my child.
And now when it comes to the youngsters themselves, and also when it comes to the podcast itself, how can someone that may be interested in tuning in to listening to what you're talking about, how can they get locked in for the Early Risers podcast? And then, go ahead.
So you can actually anywhere you can, you might get your podcast, it's on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast, just search for Early Risers and it will pop up and you can listen. There's also, if you go online to that littlemomentscount.org, you can access the podcast there, and you can also access discussion guides. Each episode has a discussion guide with it, because a lot of people like to take the information and then continue to have conversations about what they learned on that episode.
So now when it comes to listening to the podcast itself, and we're talking about, the support side of it, and locking it in for the parents and the educators themselves, but then also, just the average person that may be listening, what would you say, when it comes to resources as well as information that you could give to some of the parents or the educators out there that need to know more about the podcast and anything else in that area?
Yeah. Well, the good news is there are lots of resources out there. Like I said, the podcast has now, we're in season 5. So like episode 2 of season 5, I believe, drops tomorrow. And so we're in the midst of this season. We are talking actually with early childhood educators in the classroom. Last season, it was all parents. We talked to parents about what their experiences were with racism and their young children. So there's lots of different episodes and different people to listen to. I would also say each episode in the discussion guide, we also have resources. So we list resources for each episode that you can connect with. And there's lots of different books out there. PBS does some great things about children and race. And there's lots of other videos and other resources out there that people can look up. And we provide those links and things on the Little Moments Count website.
So if someone would like to get in contact with you for more information about Early Risers podcast and Little Moments Counts as well, do you have a number or email address, or how can they get in contact?
Yes, they can reach out to me. My email address is dhaulcy, that's DHAULCY, at thefamilypartnership.org. That's all one word.
Okay. Well, I'd like to say thank you very much for the time and the opportunity, and you stay blessed in 2024.
Thank you, Q. You stay blessed too.
No doubt, no doubt. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like a lock-in when it comes to Little Moments Count, you can go to littlemomentscount.org/podcast, and you can find more information. But even beyond that, Little Moments Count, you can just go to the website at littlemomentscount.org. It's FM 89.9 KMOJ, no doubt about it. It's the People's Station.
Thanks for listening to the Little Moments Count Radio Podcast in partnership with community radio stations throughout Minnesota. You can find the Little Moments Count Radio Podcast wherever you get your podcasts and at littlemomentscount.org/podcast.